Today we're going to look at the electronic payment capabilities inside Business Central Cloud. The ability to pay your vendors, customers, and employees with EFT payments is becoming more commonplace today, and Business Central has the capabilities to allow you to create EFT files that can be uploaded to your bank where payments can be dispersed to your vendors. The first thing we're going to look at is our bank account card. And we have two bank accounts here. You can set up EFT formats for several different bank accounts and different banks. You can see that we have our bank account number up here at the top. If we go down here into our transfer fast pane here, you can see I have a payment export format of US EFT default. There is a default Nacha format that is used with a lot of banks, but often requires a bit of customization based on whatever bank you have. However, we always use it as a starting point. The thing I want you to realize here is that this is at the bank account level. So if you do have separate formats and you want to issue out of several banks, this can be easily accommodated. Once you have your bank information set up properly and your EFT export format has been approved by your bank, for these examples, we'll look at the vendor card, and there are a few things on the vendor card that we're going to want to look for. First and foremost, if we scroll down to the payments area, we have a payment method code, and we recommend that you set up a payment method code that can easily differentiate between those vendors that want to be paid via electronic transfer and those that want to be paid by traditional check. So we've specified this vendor as ACH EFT. That's how they're going to receive their payments. In addition, we can set up bank accounts on this vendor, and you can see they have a Bank of America bank account, whereby you need to put in the bank account number and the transit number that's going to be used for the electronic format. And also specify that when using this bank, we're going to use for electronic payments. If we go back to the payments area, if they do have multiple banks, you can set up a preferred bank account code that will be used for electronic payments as well. And lastly, on the vendor card, if we look at our document layouts up here, document layouts are the forms that get printed. Remember, if we're sending an electronic payment, what's going to happen is that electronic payment is not going to have a stub printed out. So we're going to want to either email or produce what we call a vendor remittance form. And here's where you can set up that vendor remittance form and also put in the email address or addresses that are going to be used whenever that email gets generated. So we have a form that's going to be attached to the email, and then we also have an email body layout that's specific to this vendor as well, which is the body of the email that gets generated. Now that we have our bank account set up properly and our vendor set up properly, we're going to use a payment journal for the cash disbursement. This is the same window that we use for traditional checks when we send them to the printer. So it's the exact same process. Now, what we typically do is we'll set up a couple of different batches. We'll set up a EFT batch as well as a check batch. That way you can keep everything in its respective batch. So I'm going to choose EFT payments here, and I'm going to go ahead and prepare payments, and I'm going to suggest vendor payments based on some parameters. So when I click on that, I'm going to see my last payment date, which is when I want to issue checks for due documents. And most importantly, down here at the bottom, I'm going to filter on my vendor records where the payment method code is ACH or EFT. And you can see I have some other options in here as well. So when I set that filter, I'm only going to pull vendors that have elected for electronic payments into this batch. So when I click OK, it has reviewed and it's seen that my worldwide importers vendor does have a payment that's out there. Here it is. It's for $1,115.23. So now that I've brought it into my payment journal, I can now prepare or export the payment format. Now this is the same step as sending the checks to the printer. So if I go to my bank item here and I click on export, what's going to happen is it's going to give me some basic information here. And this is asking me, how do I want to output the remittance that you have configured? So I'm going to send emails to any of my any of my vendors that are inside this batch that have email configured. And any of the statements that don't have an email configured, I can print those remaining ones by clicking this checkbox right here. So when I click OK, that is going to produce the job, which generates the remittance. You can see it assigned my next remittance number right over here. And then if I scroll over here to the right, the process that I just went through was actually the process of printing the check. So I can see I have that check printed over here on the right. You can see this checkbox is here. And really that email has already been sent. So my last step that I need to do here is to generate my EFT file, which is going to be sent to the bank. So when I click on Generate EFT File, it's going to show me any remittances that have not yet been exported. So I could do a bunch of them throughout the day and then export them all out to separate files at the end of the day if I want. But now I just have one sitting right here, and I'll go ahead and generate that EFT file. And if I look at that file, you can see this is in the bank's required format. This file can now be uploaded into your bank website, into your e-banking suite, and that will generate the payment to the vendor. My last step here now is to post my transaction. So once I've completed everything, my transaction will now post, and now that payment is posted to my vendor ledger entries. As a last step here, I just want to show you the email that was generated from the system. You can see I have an email body here that's completely configurable. And then if I open up the attachment, I can get my remittance form that takes the place of this stub. So I hope you found that useful. You can see that electronic remittance payments in Business Central are easy to configure and easy to administer as well.